Hey guys, Anthony, the MMA and political analyst. Today, we'll talk about Jon Jones. Jon Jones is a very intriguing character in MMA. Obviously, he's got the skills to probably be one of the best fighters in the world. I mean, I know we throw around that term pound for pound. I don't even know what that really means anymore, but he's more or less considered one of the top pound for pound fighters in the world. Um, has destroyed most of his opponents. Only been challenged a couple times, really. I mean, and one true challenge was Alexander Gustafsson, and he was able to kind of take down him and finally get and get a pull off a close decision victory. But other than that, he's more or less dominated his most of his opponents like rather handedly, and went on to have another dominating performance against Glover Teixeira. Although I did see some holes in Jon Jones wrestling this time around, and last fight for that matter. And so that might be a concern going into fight Alexander Gustafsson again, but that's a different topic. But Jon Jones, look on that wrestling guy. Anyway, despite the fact that he's been so successful, he's been a very exciting fighter. Does all kind of new, different techniques, spinning attacks, he's suplexing people. He's taking people down. He's submitting them. He's doing all kind of different things. All the things you think a fan would want. And not only that, not only can he prove to dominate guys, he's also proven that in a crunch, in a dogfight, he can come back and win and rise to the adversity and be a true champion. Um, Vitor Belfort had him in a nasty armbar. He was able to fight his way out of that and keep on fighting with the messed up arm and everything. So, you know, you think that he'd be a very popular fighter, but he's not. He's not really popular, especially among the hardcore fans. If you look at his pay-per-view buy rates, they're traditionally not that high, and he just gets a lot of hate by a lot of MMA fans for a myriad of reasons that we're going to go over. But it's been thrown around that it has something to do with race, maybe, I don't know. I'm not going to go down that road yet, but we'll get to it. But I'm not willing to commit exclusively to the whole race thing yet, but we'll see. But Jon Jones kind of busted on the scene. Beat up I think Andre Guzmão first, right? Kind of beat him by decision, and then really opened up some eyes with his crushing of Stephan Bonner. Oh man, he sent Stephan Bonner flying 3-4 times with nasty suplexes, and then submitted Jake O'Brien. Lost to Matt Hamill. What? Yes, we all know infamously now he was DQ'd for vertical elbows. Kind of a weird situation there. Beat Brandon Vera, Vladimir Rechisenko, Ryan Bader, Mauricio Shogun Hua for the title. Now, I think that's where was like the beginning of the end for Jon Jones when he beat Shogun. And here's the reason why. Shogun was always a legend among like the hardcore MMA fans, right? We all remember Shogun from back in the Pride days, and he was destroying everybody. He beat up Rampage. Uh, he had like Rampage like hanging over the ropes, just dead looking. That was terrible. But to all of a sudden turn around and see that guy, a hero, just completely and utterly just destroyed, right? I think for whatever reason that turned a lot of people off, right? Um, you know, Jon Jones is one of these like new age athletes that MMA have been talking about in the last few years. Like, oh, he's going to be some like multi-sport athlete. He could have played football. He could have played this. He could have played that. Chose MMA because he brings all these skills to the table, and then just blows everybody away. And so I don't think people like that. Like your traditional MMA fan, they like the Chuck Liddell type guy. They like the maybe like Rampage type guy, or even Shogun. Guys who aren't like who are athletic in their own right, but not like just crazy superstar athletic, and are just tough, strong, and like physically and mentally tough. Right? That's the kind of MMA fighter that we're used to seeing traditionally. All of a sudden, you see this guy is like he's making it look easy. He's learning all these techniques and pick up on all these new stuff easily. Anderson Silva, you see him doing all that crazy stuff, but yeah, he's like 37 and now he's like almost damn near 40, right? So it takes years and years to pick all that stuff up. Jon Jones just soaks it up in a day. And I don't think that's what a lot of the MMA fans are used to, right? And so when they saw Shogun just get absolutely crushed by Jon Jones, I think that was kind of like the first step in the decline of Jon Jones, at least as far as the fans are concerned. Next fight, Rampage. Uh, had a lot of back and forth with Rampage, but that was kind of expected. Ended up choking out Rampage. Rampage didn't really have much for him. And that was when this whole dirty fighter thing came about with Jon Jones, because we've seen him, and he did this back in the Shogun fight where he would kick at dudes' knees, right? He'd throw those like little side kicks right above the knee or sometimes right at the knee. It's a completely legal move, but if you do that in the gym, like when you're training, that's obviously considered a dick move, and that kind of stuff will get you thrown out of the gym, like when you're training. And so, while they're legal in fights, you don't see a lot of guys doing them because it's hard to land, but you can really mess up somebody's knees doing that. And it's just like, people ending people's career, hits the wrong way, lands the wrong way, or put somebody on the shelf for months and months. I can see why people consider it kind of a, dick move, but it's legal, so, hey, whatever works. And, so he's able to beat Rampage onto Lyoto Machida, and another big strike against Jon Jones now. So Lyoto actually challenged him, right? For the first round, and may have even beat Jon Jones. And now all of a sudden, a lot of those hardcore fans who don't like Jon Jones are like, yes, yes, this is it, right? And it turns out that he clocked Lyoto with the left hook, and then choked him unconscious standing, and then just dropped him straight to the ground and walked off like a gangster. Damn. Right? And I think that was really, as far as like the MMA hardcore fan base, was gone after that. Like, that was the end of Jon Jones as far as they were concerned. Done. Right? A lot of people say, oh, you didn't have to drop him. And then a lot of people saying, oh, well, Machida was winning that fight. And then, Jon Jones, with his long reach and his long arms, was able to da-da-da-da-da-da. It doesn't matter. I mean, he won, he choked out Machida. And we've seen guys do all kind of crazy stuff. We've seen guys blast dudes in the head, have them knocked out on the ground unconscious, and have, the dude come in and just blast him even more, like Dan Henderson did on Michael Bisping. Right? So we've seen that kind of stuff all day and night. People love that. When Jon Jones chokes out a guy and lets him go, it's like a horrible, horrible, cocky, arrogant, horrible move. Right? So again, I'm not really sure where all this hate comes from. I really don't. But again, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that he's young. He hasn't, at least back then, he hadn't really discovered himself yet. Like, you see him kind of play the whole like, oh, I'm just grateful, champion. I just want to, do my job and I be a family man. I got 2 kids and all this other stuff. But then all of a sudden, he'd also say something completely arrogant and cocky a few days later. Right? So nobody can really figure this guy out. He doesn't have a persona. Right? Now that might be his management's fault. They haven't marketed him the right way and haven't sat down with him and tried to help develop some kind of like strategy for him as far as interacting with the media. You can blame his management for that. But still, like, I don't think people were really turned off by that. His weird, kind of like irreverent, style. He'd be just humble champion one day, cocky guy another day. Confident in his skills, but to a point where it kind of got annoying, right? And that's the one thing I didn't really like about him. Like, I can't really figure this guy out. You know what I mean? If he's gonna be a heel, great, be a heel. If you're gonna be the humble champion, the good guy, well then great, be the good guy. But it's always like you don't know where this guy's coming from. He's just all over the place. And it could be from the fact that he's just young. It could be that he doesn't have good marketing, doesn't good management. I don't know, but it's not going to make me hate the guy. I'm just not going to be an active fan follower of him. That's all. Anyway, going on to Rashad Evans. More just devastating information about Jon Jones coming out. Rashad did a lot of damage. I mean, Rashad used to be one of the most hated fighters in the UFC. And somehow or another, he was able to deflect all that onto Jon Jones and had people booing Jon Jones and cheering Rashad Evans. Who would have thought we ever saw that? Right? I mean, that story he told about Jon Jones was devastating, man. Like, on the opening to the primetime show of that fight between Jon Jones and Rashad Evans, Rashad Evans told a story about how Jon Jones had a book of all of his techniques that he had, all the techniques that he'd practiced. And when he was getting ready to fight, this is back when they were training in the same gym, obviously, Rashad Evans went over to Jon Jones and was getting ready to, hey, warm him up and get ready to go out there and do his fight. And as Rashad came closer, Jon Jones like closes the book and kind of like puts it away and is like looking up at him like, yeah, what do you want? You know, these guys are in the same weight division, training at the same gym. Damn. You know what I mean? That's kind of like an indication of what kind of guy Jon Jones is. Assuming that story is true. You know, wow. That's tough. That's dirty, man. You know, if you guys don't know, like if you train at a gym and you get really close and you develop a relationship with your guys, and you got to have complete trust in your training partners, because, you know, when you're in there sparring, you got to know that the person who's sparring with you isn't sparring with you for his own personal benefit. You know what I mean? Like if I'm training for a fight and I got a sparring partner, this sparring partner is doing everything he can to work me and give him the best look that he possibly can to make me better. But if I know if I'm even thinking that my training partner is not really putting full effort into this, and that they're just there to try to figure me out, right, and try to figure out what, you know, gauge my timing and my skill set and all that, so that one day he can turn around and try to fight me and beat me, well then you don't have a good gym relationship. Like you can't have it like that, man. If you don't trust your training partners, then you can't trust anybody. And so for Jon Jones to do that, you know, like, you know, all this like trying to act all secretive about his moves and all the stuff he's bringing to the table, that's like a dick move again. You know. And so again, more information about Jon Jones coming out. I believe this is also after this fight. I don't know if it's after or before we get the DUI, right? Jon Jones got a DUI. Now he's in his 2012 Bentley or something like that. It was a Bentley or Rolls Royce something. Gets into a nice little DUI with two women in the car who was not his wife, right? Or his fiance, wife, whatever. You know, that was kind of a strange story. And again, Jon Jones just completely just irreverent during this whole time. Like, oh yeah, I made a mistake, whatever. You know what I mean? And I don't know. Like, it just seemed, again, weird that whenever he's talking about himself, he's, oh, I'm a family man. I got 2 kids. I got a fiance. Meanwhile, he's drinking, driving, crashing his car into a pole or a tree or something like that. You know, it's like you can't have it both ways, man. Look, if you just want to be, you know, yourself, hey, I'm partying it up and I'm getting it on, I'm drinking and I'm whatever, having girls, well then just be that guy. You know what I mean? That's fine. Be that guy. But, you know, when you give us mixed messages, it really turns the fan base off quick, man. Then he fought Vitor Belfort. That's when he was able to get out of the armbar. And then, oh, man, I almost forgot. After the Rashad Evans fight, I believe he was supposed to fight Dan Henderson. Dan Henderson gets hurt. No opponent. Enter Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen offers to take the fight on behalf of Dan Henderson since Dan Henderson was hurt. And, you know, it seemed like they were going to make that fight happen, but I believe 7 days prior to the fight, Jon Jones says, no, I don't want to take the fight. I'm not ready to fight Chael Sonnen. And, you know, and that was, I mean, when I say the Shogun Rua was the beginning of the end for Jon Jones, that right there, that situation was the end of Jon Jones. They had to cancel the whole UFC event. You know, obviously a lot of guys on the undercards didn't get paid and all that stuff. And, you know, it didn't help that, you know, the UFC, instead of just saying like, hey, you know what? He's the champ. He made a decision. Yeah, it sucks. We don't agree with it, but, you know, he only got 7 days notice, so we understand and just move on from there. They went out of their way to bash Jon Jones and out of their way to smash him. But he's your champion. He's like the best talent the organization I've ever seen in years. You can't just throw him under the bus, right, in front of the fans and try to make him look bad. Because you're going to have to rely on this guy, you know, 2-3 years down the road. But they did. They just threw him under the bus. And, you know, Dana White just can't help himself. Talking about, oh, he's a sport killer and, oh, fuck this and fuck that and all this other stuff. And I'm like, come on, you guys are killing me. And then now also they're wondering why people don't like Jon Jones. Well, maybe because you were, like, blasting him and dragging his name on the mud for 2 months after that canceled event. So, anyway, so now, you know, now Jon Jones is
really in a pickle here. But he does fight Vitor Belfort, beats him after getting out of the armbar, fights Chael Sonnen finally, and was on the Ultimate Fighter show. And again, he was a decent coach, although as usual he's kind of bland. Just kind of a bland, just cookie cutter personality. Didn't really say anything like anything significant. Whether it be positive or negative. He was just there, he coached, and that was it. Chael Sonnen, surprisingly, was kind of the same way. I mean, he did have some doozies during the show, but he didn't really do anything crazy. And so that show ended up being a wash, I think. Now, they fought each other, and Jon Jones crushed Chael Sonnen. Who thought that Chael Sonnen had any chance in that fight anyway? He coming off, what, 2 losses? Coming off 2 losses and then gets a title shot at a higher weight class? Chael Sonnen, ladies and gentlemen. And then he fights Alexander Gustafsson, pulls out a narrow victory, right? And again, he was already dead in the eyes of the fans, and now he's really dead. Because now people were so happy to finally see somebody challenge Jon Jones, take him into deep water, beat him up, send him to the hospital after the fight was over, right? But in the end, Alexander Gustafsson couldn't get the job done, and Jon Jones wins a narrow decision. And now the fans are in uproar. He was robbed. Alexander Gustafsson was robbed. He was beating Jon Jones. He was killing Jon Jones. Blah, 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 blah. And people are so, immersed in their hatred that they can't even look at the fight objectively now. They hate Jon Jones so much that they can't even, look at the fight objectively and say, yeah, well, yeah, it looked like Jon Jones won. And even if, they don't agree, to say it was a robbery is ridiculous. I mean, it was a very, very, very intense back and forth fight. You can't say it was a robbery for freaking Alexander Gustafsson. That's ridiculous. That's insane. But that was their hope. Didn't work out for him. And then Glover. There were sort of a few people who were like, "Oh yeah, Glover has a chance." No. All right, and Glover got destroyed. Oh, man, I almost forgot the F-word thing leading up to this Glover-Teixeira fight. That was another big hit on Jon Jones. But although I will say this, I don't think a lot of the fans really turned on him after that whole him using the F-word in reference to gay people thing on social media. Apparently he had some troll fans who were, clowning him on his page, making fun of him, taunting him. And magically out of nowhere, Jon Jones claims it was not him, it was one of his aides or something like that, wrote back to one of these trollers, and utilizing the F word. You're a faggot, whatever, something like that. And you're a homosexual, some stupid stuff like that. Jon Jones claims it was not him. He says, no, it wasn't me. First he said my account was hacked. Later on he said, oh, it was one of my assistants, did that on my behalf without my permission or something like that. Did I think he did it? And my answer honestly is no. Not because again, I'm not trying to defend Jon Jones, but we've seen Jon Jones all this time over these years. We've got plenty of body evidence to establish what this person is like and how he reacts to things. Now, when I just couldn't imagine Jon Jones just resorting to, oh, you're a faggot. Like he said some insultful things to people before, and they're usually thinly veiled insults trying to hide in some kind of stupid halfway intelligent statement. But he's never just been like, oh, you're a faggot. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like him. But it did come from his account. And, there's only so many people who just, it comes from your phone, right? So, I mean, really? People are just walking around with your phone, right? But, I don't know. It's really up in the air. But I don't think that really cost him in the eyes of fans because, some of the fans for MMA, I'll just be honest with you, they're not too concerned about who's getting called the F word. It's just not something. It'd be different if this was like football or basketball, one of the bigger sports where they have a much more diverse fan base. But the people who watch MMA traditionally aren't really worried about that. So I don't think that really made a big difference in his fan base. But anyway, he goes on to fight Glover Teixeira, beats him, and he's still remaining tight-lipped about a rematch with Alexander Gustafsson. They try to get a rematch for him, immediate rematch. Jon Jones didn't want to do that. And so now they're in this weird situation where all the fans are just, they can't wait to get Alexander Gustafsson back in there. He's the one, he's the hope, he can beat Jon Jones. And maybe he can. But it's like a lot of these haters on Jon Jones are like, it's like they're personally invested in this. Like they just can't wait to see Jon Jones get beat. And I don't know why. I mean, like, you know, I like to see these dominant talents. I like to see that. I like to see a guy who just destroys everybody, keeps that belt, and forces somebody to take it. And that's why I can't wait to see this Alexander Gustafsson fight. Not because I just want to see Jon Jones get beat. I just want to see a good fight, a scrap to the end. Who's going to take that belt? That's my interest in it. My interest isn't on just hating Jon Jones, which is what a lot of people's interest are. And, you know, if you ask me, you know, does it have anything to do with this race? I'm going to go, yeah. You know, is it all about his race? Is that what people hate him? Yeah. Um, no, it's not all about race. You know, if you take all of the hatred put together and you lump it into one, I'd say maybe 10 to 15% is race, I think. You know, he's not one of these old school Chuck Liddell types. Okay, he's, like I said, new school athlete, could probably play other sports, and that's not what they want to see uh, up there in the UFC. They want to see people they can identify with. You know, just a big, strong, tough guy off the streets who's, you know, putting in work in the MMA game. That's what they want to see. They don't want to see some prima donna athlete, you know, like they see in the NFL and the NBA. That's why they switched to MMA in the first place. That's why they can't stand watching football anymore. They can't stand watching basketball anymore. They want to see some just grimy, gritty dudes who aren't getting paid that much go in there and destroy each other. But that's not what Jon Jones is. Okay? He's a new age athlete, and that's not what people are really into for MMA. And that's why he hasn't really got a lot of the following that you would think he had, considering what he's done over the years. Anyway, that's just my take on Jon Jones. You know, I've seen him. I don't think he's done anything more cocky or anything more arrogant or pompous than what a lot of other fighters have done in the past who are still have big fan bases. So, you know, I don't know. I just we'll see how it turns out. He'll get his rematch with Gustafsson, and we'll see how things go from there. But I know it's a long video, so hit the like button, subscribe, leave comments, do what you gotta do. But until next time I see you, this is Anthony, the MMA and political analyst. I'll talk to you.